seeing you. That's fantastic. Michael Duran. Hi, Amy. Hi, Kimberly. Hi, Lynn. Hi, everybody coming in. Thank you so much for taking this time today. Yeah, awesome. Paula.
So great to see everybody. We'll give folks a moment to join. So many awesome people.
This is where we're supposed to have that like intro music, Phil.
Da 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 da. Yeah, I don't know. Where do you want to go today? Is a little bit of a big question here. So I'm Phil Klein, and welcome and thank you so much for joining this experimental session where we're going to be with Patti Dobrowolski. And I met her as the TEDx Seattle co-founder and co-organizer when she gave an absolutely astoundingly wonderful talk about how to envision your future. And she's been working with organizations and individuals and nonprofits for many, many years. And I can't say how many emails I've gotten of people sharing what their vision has become after practicing the basics.
Uh-oh, did we lose Phil?
He became muted somehow.
Yeah,
Looks
Phil,
like I got muted for a second.
Muted. You dropped out. There we go. Come back.
It's good. Yeah. So so we're going to basically explore questions about how to see beyond the challenges that we're now facing in these challenging times, not only with COVID-19, but how are we building back better in ways to think in a positive way about where we could be, where we want to be, where we want to see the future coming into being. What are those elements? And we want to make this an interactive session. So we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and leave it to Patti to kind of set the stage for how we sort of want to think about this. And then we'll give you an opportunity to basically unmute and share what your thoughts are on some specific points that we'd love to work with you to cultivate. So Patti?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Phil. So I just want to say thank you everyone for taking the time, because what I know to be true is if you're anything like what we're experiencing in different parts of the US, you understand that, you know, we not only have COVID, but everything else is happening at the same time. We're having all this race dialogue happening, all these explosive ways that we are showing up in the world and doing what we can to make change and reevaluating ourselves. And we want to capture really what that feels like for you. So it becomes a dialogue. And the way the mapping works is that when we use a picture, it will help us to figure out what could be a possible future, what could be some bold steps that we could take in our individual world as well as in a bigger scale. And so that's our goal for today. And so as interactive as you want to be, please feel free to use the chat right away. So you can just say, you know, you could write your name and where you're from in there, or you can put in there something about why you're here, what called you to be in this conversation today. And you can see that I put up here in this cloud, you know, all of us standing together, you know, in a heart with the globe, because this is, I know around the globe, people are standing with us in this time when we are really trying to create change and create positive change. So just put something in the chat of who you are and where you're from, and then we'll get started. And there is a live Facebook feed at the same time. So people will be putting information into the chat there, and then Michelle will be putting it here. So if you have any issues at all, Michelle is on this with us as you know, the administrator to help us with any problems that you have. So, and I'm interested to hear from some of you that are actually in Seattle, where we have some very interesting things happening in the country, as well as where you are around the world. So the way that we structure this, so good. the way that we structure this is that we're going to look at really what's the new normal right now? Like, what are we experiencing? But let's focus first on what we feel is positive about what's happening. And if you would, just put something into the chat, or you can use the function of raising your hand. You know, there are a couple of things in here. I don't know if you've used the participant thing, but you can raise your hand in here to let us know that you have something to say, or you can wave on the screen and Michelle will catch you, but put something in the chat. And so I love this, that part of what you're looking for is the growth viewpoint, a new way, a new job, a new country. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so let's start by looking at where we are right now, so that from a positive state, what's it like in your world around you? What do you see happening, and what do you think is positive about what's happening? What's your perception of it? So if you put that in the chat, and then Phil, he's going to call it out to me, and I'm going to capture some things up here. And Phil, even if you want to start to seed that a little bit, that will help people think about that.
Sure. I mean, just to think out loud, a vision of a city without police and what that could look like was a headline article in the Washington Post today, looking at in Seattle, there's the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. It's like, how do people take citizenship, people taking citizenship a little bit more actively into their own hands? So that's one thing that's definitely happening. People are voicing things that they've been quiet about, either their whole lives or for a long time, or only in limited sharing, so that I'm hearing more openness and a willingness to be honest about challenges and pain that has been pushed under the rug or silenced or kept silent about. And there's an opportunity to build back better. People are thinking about new normals that are different from how things used to be, and not wanting to go kind of back. And it feels like there's a little bit of a lessening of some of the constraints of how things have always been, because we're living in a world where so much has already changed.
Okay, cool. Let's see what other people are adding. Anything adding in there? Let's see our 15 new messages. So if you want to read some of those out of the chat for me, that'd be great.
Sure. Opportunity to step up to difficult conversations, says Lynn, and asking friends in minorities communities to help me, from her point of view, understand their experiences in life as it relates to racism. Another one, Carmen says, working on something with meaning, having meaning. People valuing friends and family time more during this pandemic time, says Robin. Neighbors are more chatty as they walk around these days. New ways of working and communicating. More people are having their eyes opened to things that need to change in the world. Slower pace of life and more time with close family. Brittany shares about her background in sustainability and political science, and is looking how she can assist the downtrodden via help, starting self-governed enterprises that help challenge the current corporate America we're living in. Working from home, says Rick, has helped me focus my direction. And from California, Monterey, a fan of your work, Patti, Kimberly is. She helps people change their lives. I've seen that too. And thinking about professional fields as creative types and how that has changed since COVID has started. That's a lot.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, so that's good. I love that. And all the changes that we're seeing. There's a lot of crack openness during this time. And what we know about disruption, right, is that when we have disruption, there's opportunity. It's always on the backside of that coin, but it needs to be focused in some way. So tell me then, what are the things that are getting under your skin? What's hard for you? And I'm just going to just tee this up by saying this one thing. I consider myself to be a very open person, that I consider diversity to be a part of who I am as a gay woman in a lifetime. And I grew up, during the first busing in LA, right? So, but I asked myself, and I know that Robert, who's also on the call, we had a conversation about this, that what else could we be doing? We're not doing enough. Whatever we think as white people that we're doing is good enough, it's not enough, because we're still in a system that's locked. And so we need to figure out, for me, so to me, I would say one of the things that's challenging is it feels like we think what we perceive, our self-perception, is not reality. What do other people think? What's challenging for this time?
Brittany shares, how do we unlock this broken system to new changes? Where do we start and how?
Yeah, thank you.
Not clear about where and how we start or what we do.
Thank you.
And Paula shares needing to become aware that being open but not speaking up isn't okay anymore. Which reminds me that, if we're not intentionally inclusive, we're often, if not always, unintentionally exclusive. Breaking out unrest. Wow, there's a lot of good stuff coming in. Keep it coming. Breaking old self-habits and self-perceptions amidst a very broken world. So how do we do personal change in a broken external world? When everything else feels broken, we tend to put ourselves and our needs on the sidelines personally. So there is this interplay between personal and political or public.
Yeah.
Civil unrest challenge, seeing people get steeped in the argument of who's right and who's wrong. Hatred instead of looking at a systematic approach to find root causes and solution.
Yeah, there's no systematic approach.
Need for sustainability and reuse. Frustration at being on a path that has not solved the problem. And feeling like we can't hug people right now. Fake news is everywhere and can't be stopped, at least easily. And worry about our vulnerable family members. The more uncomfortable conversations are actually happening, and there's some letting of the variety of viewpoints onto the table with equal weight. How do we build bridges across ideological differences? How do we take self-responsibility for changing our own biases and addressing people's resistance to opening this?
Yeah, I'm curious too, so I love these things. I kind of want to have a few people, especially the person who said something about building bridges. How do we build bridges during this time? Can you tell me, can we put that person, Brittany, can we put Brittany can we ask you to talk a little bit about that, Brittany? Like what have you done in the past that actually, or in the current that's been working for you in terms of building bridges? What are you currently doing, like, to help with this piece of it? Because it's really key. You probably have to unmute your microphone. It's there in the left hand. There you go.
Hello. Yeah, so I've been learning a lot right now about Putnam's idea of social capital. And there's a difference between building social capital in a homogenous group, people who are the same race, ethnicity, identity, and then bridging social capital, which is where you bridge across ideologies or ethnicities and try and create that social capital of, I'll do something good for you, we'll do something good for the community together. And it's been difficult in my personal life because it feels like you kind of have to take their arguments in, like, for example, I'm a sustainability major, but my family doesn't believe in sustainability. They don't think that climate change is a thing. And so having to deal with that, I've used arguments, well, like, if we're building a better future that's more sustainable, what's the worst you're going to get out of it? A better future, right? Or arguments of, like, well, what's the harm in doing something better? It feels like a cop-out to your own ideals of why you should be sustainable, but you have to kind of make those sacrifices to build that bridge so that the conversation can continue in the long term.
Yeah, fantastic. Who else would like to say something about the current state before we start to envision the future? Anything else you want to share? Anybody from Seattle want to share your experience being there right now?
Hi everyone, this is Barry Johnson. I, as a Black man in this time, am very excited about what's happening. It's very difficult. There are a million things happening simultaneously. There is no better time to address our current and future and past problems than now, while we have the attention of everyone. The moment where we were inside with the pandemic, and perhaps during that time we were able, a million things happening, to look at problems that have been happening in my life and people's lives, and it has caused people to put more focus on it. And while change is a very long, exhausting thing, I am very happy about the current state of what people are doing in this moment. And for the first time in my life, my parents' life as a man, my father was a part of the Little Rock Nine. He got to go into schools when they were desegregated. This is one of the more interesting times in look at problems that have been happening. There's potential for a possible change.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think too that, this is, I love that we're stuck and that we have to really deal with it. And so it gives people an opportunity to educate yourself and connect with your community. I just moved from Denver to Dallas, and in Fort Worth, I've been just going around to meet the people of color, the businesses that they own. So I know them, that they know my face, that I know theirs, that they become part of my community now, right? And I think in the past, I would have just gone anywhere, and now I'm like, oh no, let's be intentional about everything that we do so that we're supporting the right people, and that wherever our cash goes, it's going to the right place. And I wonder if other people, what kinds of things you've been doing to help yourself in this time. What other things have you been doing to educate yourself, like Brittany was talking about? What else have you been doing?
Me again. I know that for a personal level, I've been reading So You Want to Talk About Race by, I believe her name is Ojawaya. And her book kind of talks about her life as an African-American woman in America and how all the things that she's been dealing with and the pain that it's caused her, but her journey of standing up and finally speaking out in her personal life and on the internet, and how much attention she's gotten from that and what she sees about the world around her. And that's been helpful for me, but it also brings me great sadness to listen to these stories and then see all of this happening around me, to the point where it's getting kind of overwhelming to be involved in or to even watch media, because it's just it's just sad. Like, I'm glad for the movement and the things that are happening, but I worry for all the lives of the people that are fighting for it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just to echo that, that's very true. But in this case, it's necessary. And I think, as it pertains to the news, we could take this conversation a lot of different directions. But one thing being in the middle of it, like this, that Black Lives Matter mural that's out in the Seattle Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And there is a lot happening simultaneously, both here in Seattle and around the world. But it's so needed because we've had this continual thinking of, oh, someone else will address this issue, or there's been a little bit of advancement since the end of the Civil War and since we were brought here in 1692, but there needs to be this very uncomfortable look at what it's in place. A lot of people, I'm not even speaking just particularly as a Black man, I'm speaking brown, indigenous, and different segments. There needs to be a bold look at what's happened. And if we are not willing to step up to look at what's happened, no way we can address current issues and look at change. So while this is a time I wouldn't consider it scary at all. It's just, there's just a certain level of uncertainty that's happening. There is, at the end of that, advancement that's happening. We're seeing new laws go into legislation. We're seeing people actually, we're seeing bonds than we've seen historically. So it is, I'm right there with you, that it's a difficult conversation to broach, but more than anything, it's just time to look at what has taken place and a lot of people to act. And the act of not acting is really someone that I choose to not look towards advancement. So it's just finding the right way to navigate those. And if there's nothing to be about the right thing to do, just consume and then figure the right time to do. But more than anything, it's time to act.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. Yes, agreed. I think that the kind of uncertainty that we're living in is really amazing. And, it comes to a head before it gets really feeling like you're really losing control before it finds its homeostasis. So it hasn't yet, but it's starting to. You can see legislation. You can see, senators standing up and, mayors standing up for what's right, and companies, big business, standing up and doing the right thing. And I think this is what we're looking for in terms of those are things, when you see that kind of change and you're one of those people that feel like this is kind of out of control, you want to write that down and you want to put it on a Post-it note and you want to put it up on your wall so you can see this happened and this happened and this happened. And that's why we're doing it, so that you hit that success button inside yourself and you feel motivated to keep doing things, keep showing up, keep calling people, keep getting to know people, keep bridging, building those bridges that we're talking about. Okay, fantastic. Anything else about this dialogue? I love it. Thank you for posting the books in the chat. Thank you. Phil, anything? I'd love to move to the desired new reality. You ready?
Yeah, I'm just thinking how uncertainty really is kind of the foundation for what's possible, right? I mean, if you know everything, you can't change anything. So you need that uncertainty. It's actually a condition. And the discomfort can actually be a motivator, as I'm thinking about it. Discomfort can be a motivator. And what we're discomfortable, new word. Yeah, what the disruption, I think, that is kind of critical, and the discomfort that we kind of need to start getting open to is we need to be uncomfortable with how things have been so that some new ready reality starts to come into being. So yeah, I'm ready to pivot.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. I love that. Let the discomfort motivate you. So, and realize, we're in this world, but we're not of it, right? We're here, but we are looking at it from a bigger perspective. So what can we do from that perspective of love, right? If we're an entity of love, what can we do to create that, spread that, share that, be that, give that in the world? That's our charge. And especially now, you know, no matter where you are, to make sure that you're that vehicle for it, that you're the vehicle for letting that person's voice be heard first, right? So changing your own behavior, looking at your behavior. Okay, cool. All right, let's do this one thing together. If you would, just do this with me in the air. It's the infinity symbol. It's a brain integrator. We want to just kind of get ourselves reset because we're about to dream a positive future for what we expect, you know, what we want to believe is possible. And we got to get the critic out of the way. And the only way to do it is integrate your brain and kind of lose the red on this side for a little bit so that we can move over to the green side. And so I would ask you to, wherever you are in the world, just put your feet firmly on the ground so that you remember this is the planet we stand on. We all share this. That's why it's in the picture. We share it together. And so everybody that's in this experience, we are the right people to have the conversation that's about to happen next. So I would like for you to just close your eyes for a second and imagine, in the best case scenario, that what do you see a year from today will be the experience that we will have so that we can stand in that positive place together and we can build that world together. And so if you can imagine that, where you are at the center of that universe and you play a part in that, then describe for me in the chat, open your eyes and describe best case scenario a year from today. Really, how are we different? What does it feel like? How have we learned and grown from this experience? Let's talk about those things first before we get very specific about those things we know that we want to have in place. So let's see, a year from today. Year from today, best case scenario. I'm looking at the chat. There's compassion and love in the chat. What else is there?
True equality from a systemic point of view. Better community. What's good for me is good for you. We take the time, people taking the time to listen to one another and hear each other fully. Thriving, inclusive communities that are co-created by their members. No us versus them. We listen to each other and take time to understand each other.
Phil, say the second one about priming. I want to capture that. I missed it, whole thing.
Don't think I said, thriving, inclusive communities, co-created by members, or that what we do is we co-create thriving, inclusive communities. More, I'm okay. Color, gender, etc. doesn't matter. Everyone treated equally with love and respect. Celebration of culture without judgment, but true curiosity and enjoyment. More togetherness. Less fake news. Less hatred. Less name calling. Harmony is inclusive. Representation is reflective of our real communities. Optimism and hopeful at our connections. More equity advancement potential. More real creativity in business thinking. A broken glass ceiling. Openness to organic connections within our community. We all have a sense of belonging. More listening. How about more than enough listening?
All right. So now, how about any specifics?
Yeah, so the right balance of law enforcement and mental health experts supporting communities in equitable ways to all demographics, right? So the balance of law enforcement and mental health support for our communities, supporting equitably, equitable support. And there is justice in our world. Justice for all.
It's not great. Last week was a shameful week for the domestic game, and I do hope we get back to the core values, the roots, which we often talk about. I want to see that being forced back into the game before we even think about playing rugby.
Worcestershire's Marine Ali has been named in the England 30-man training squad that will build.
What was that?
I think we were hearing a radio from background.
Okay. Anything else? So we've got compassion and love, equity advancement, creativity, thriving, and I had written priming, inclusive communities, curiosity, equitable support, mental health and enforcement balance. Color doesn't matter. What's good for me is good for you. More than enough listening. Better community, true equality, organic connections. We all belong. Representation reflects the real us and true justice for all. Okay, so if this is there anything that anyone would like to add to that would like the microphone to be put in here? Just put your name in the chat or raise your hand so Michelle can see it. Anybody who'd like to say something, and it could be specific.
Yeah, one more has come in: acceptance for real change in voting, health, and so I don't know if healthcare or human care, and voting. While people are thinking of what to share, I think this is where we really want to try and see, feel what it's like as a real state of being that you can personally identify with or that you can make your own.
Yeah, so how, and one question to think about is, how will I be different? How will I be different? What button inside myself am I going to, or what strength or what agility am I going to really expand upon? You know, the thing that you're good at. Yeah, good. Voting day, national holiday.
If I can share, I feel like something I've been doing a podcast lately, and something we've been talking about in the podcast is that our society is kind of built in a way that it feels like we're all on hamster wheels. We have to have a job to make money to be able to participate in the world around us, and that's kind of a fundamental issue, is that you have to have money to survive. But it's hit this certain point where it's not, it feels like it's mostly, it's mostly either you're just surviving, or on the other hand there's others that have far too much, and the lower end is, it's the 99 versus the 1%. And it's getting difficult to, like, for example, with COVID, we've seen a lot of change in action, and I think that's fantastic and great. But I read an article the other day that was talking about how much of that was because COVID allowed us the opportunity to stop and think about what's going on around us and participate in the world and start creating these changes. Because we had a moment of rest, we were able to actually think and see and be mindful and reflexive. And I think that something I want to see in the world is that there's more balance between the have-tos of having to have money to participate and having time to engage in your community, and that you're able to stop and be reflexive and think about others in the world, have more of a global citizen perspective, because you actually have the time to think about that. You're not in survival mode. You have what you need to be able to participate in the world, and also the time to think about others in the world.
Yeah, I love that. So something about time to be in community. Yeah, I think there's something about being so hamster wheel driven that we forget, you know, what's the purpose that we're here?
Something that I read recently that contributes to that idea is that Tocqueville, back in 1805, identified that a future problem with Americans' democracy is that because of individualism, that would begin to be an issue if society becomes more and more disconnected from their community. Everyone starts to think about what they need, what their family needs, what they can do to survive, that they start forgetting about the community, and they stop participating in what Tocqueville called were associations, which was essentially those groups that come together to solve collective action problems. So if a community needs a well back in 1805, the community came together to make that well happen through an association. But because we are so profit driven and we're stuck on these hamster wheels, we're becoming more and more individualized, and we're unable to have the time or the commitment to join associations, to join groups and solve collective problems.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Rick M., if you wanted to unmute, you could share your thoughts with us.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you for that. Interesting time we're going through. The thing I wanted to share was this idea of a little more compassion. So it was interesting. I'm older, so I don't get into as much social media as my daughter does. But I remember looking at some of the Facebook and things years ago, and everyone wanted to strive like to say, I had the perfect weekend, I had the best holiday, I'm doing the best ever. And I could sort of feel this, wondered if other people were like, gosh, I'm not feeling as great as that. I have to say something even, you know, and so there was this thing of keeping up with the Jones, of feeling fantastic every single day, every moment. And I wondered that kind of pressure. So, but I noticed that when I accept myself a little better, like when I don't tell myself I have to be perfect every moment, every word I say has to be perfect, you know, when I just drop that whole facade, because I'm not even close, then, you know, I'm a little more kind to other people. Like I notice I drop the judgment on others a little bit more, and they become a little more family. You know, it's like, hey, we're family, you know, oh yeah, I know you didn't mean to step on my toe. I get that. And I let it go. So the vision for me, and when we're envisioning the future, I want to make sure I don't envision a future where I have to go faster, where I just put more stuff on my plate. In fact, I would rather envision a future where I have a little time to breathe. I work in computers, and when I ask people, what's the biggest thing? They say, I'm overwhelmed. And I'm like, wow, overwhelm is the big thing. So if I was envisioning the future, it would be, let's calm down. That's it. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick.
And there's a quality to, you know, gaining a better ability to be resilient in that. You know, when you mentioned that, Rick, that, you know, someone steps on my toe, you can simply let go of it as opposed to it escalating, right? What is it? What will keep us calm?
Yeah, resilience. I think too, something about just acknowledgement of where you are and what you're experiencing right now. You know, I think sometimes we just get sidetracked by what the expectation is, as Rick was talking about, the expectation to be something instead of just be where you are. And so to me, that would be the world I'd want to live in, is a place where I have time to connect, that people who I'm connecting with take the time to connect with me. And then we do some shared activity, some sort of thing where we are giving together to make change in our community in some way, right? Pick up the trash. You know, I've been getting the neighbors where I live in my new neighborhood. There's like a street, and I like, hey, do you want to go pick up trash with me over there? Because why not? I don't know them. And that's part of what we're trying to do is now in this COVID with our masks on, you know, it allows you to be even more distance if you want that, right? And so to really make sure that you're wearing yourself, your true self behind that mask and allowing that to come forward. Fantastic. All right. So anything else that someone wants to say before we move to action? Because action, you know, ceases panic. Okay, how do we achieve both? Opens our mind. We usually find we can agree on common ground. Yes, right? So finding common ground in there. Yeah, curiosity and common ground. So now what we do is often in this process, we look at where we are right now. And then we look at this dream. So let's look at that and I'll just review that things in blue, of course, are the things that are going well. So we've got this active citizenship. We're asking what's our responsibility. We're looking for meaning. We're asking to hear more about, you know, the true stories of people of color so that we're more informed if we're a white person. We're valuing others, that there's some professional fields that are really opening things up. Those things are all great. In the meantime, we're dealing with this fake news that is just consistently bombarding us. We don't even want to watch the news. We want to match our self-perception with what is true in our reality and step into the person that we want to be. And where do we start and how to build these bridges? And the truth is, if you're open but you're not speaking up, you're part of the problem, right? It's not helpful. And so, breaking this personal and public thing wide open during this time, it leaves a lot of questions. There's a lot of fighting about who's right, and that there's not a systemic approach, right? And this social capital and sustainability, at least also the self-governing principles are coming up, and people are being very active on the top. This is the time for change. You know, now that we're in COVID, this is why this is happening. Our eyes are open. It gives us a chance to focus. And as Phil said, let the discomfort motivate you. That's the current. And now we've dreamed the new normal. And what's true about when we dream that reality, the brain doesn't know the difference between the past and this reality. It believes this is real. It's already playing the movies of how this is going to act out in your life. So the more you can add color, or you can add a little drawing in front of you of what you think that would look like, the better it will imprint on your brain and you'll remember it better. And so here in this world that we built together, we all belong. That we've got healthcare, health car, I like a health car. Representation reflects the real us. There's justice for all and harmony. And that voting day is a national holiday. Everybody goes out and that we are all voting and seeing that as a means to create change, that there's compassion and love, that there's equity advancement, you know, in the public and private sector. Creativity is happening in business. True equality is sprouting these organic connections. There's more than enough listening. We're thriving, inclusive communities. Curiosity, we leverage the rest state that we're in to make change, and that we are balancing mental health and law enforcement, equitable support. We're more than enough listening is happening. What's good for me is good for you. Color doesn't matter. And to solve collective problems. That's the new that we created. Now, what's true, or what Dan Rome would say, who wrote on the back of the napkin, he'd say, just look at this data and then close your eyes for a second and ask yourself, the part of you that knows all and has seen all and watched every kind of movie and everything that you've ever seen, ask that part of you that is connected and is part of love, what would be the 3 boldest things that we could do to get from this state to the other? What would be the 3 boldest things that we could do? And let's come up with some 3 that we want to put up here on the picture. So think about it first and take a note of it and then write it in the chat. And there's no wrong answer for this. If it's, you know, I feel we'll have a lot of overlap here, so don't be afraid of that. That's okay. And I'll add some detail to it. You can see how messy the map is already. That's due to the fact we have so many people. It's fantastic. So tell me, what would be a bold step that we could take? And you could say, you could start with you. What would be a bold step you could take, and then make it more of an expansive thing? What would that look like for us as a community? As a community right here in this Zoom call, what could we do? It's one bold step we could take.
So Patty, we have some coming in.
Good. What do we got, Phil?
So we've got scheduled time in high schools and introduce them to my professional field in communities of color, mentoring past graduates, scheduling time to give in the community, especially to find a way to talk to others we don't know, mostly to listen and become friends. Connect to like-minded people openly and by showing my humanity. Addressing our current issues head on with sincerity and an openness to learn. Sharing resources and knowledge from a place of abundance, not scarcity. We need short-term and long-term plans, such as raising our children to be socially conscious, as well as addressing current issues, feeding the poor, speaking about and speaking out about justice, etc. Ask straightforward questions in business. Vote. Let's see.
Thank you.
Elevate people of color who are undervalued.
So what I love about what you have all just shared is I can see it coming from your perspective. And so what we want to do too is that we want to think about what's the one thing that you can do. What's the one thing that you in your life would commit to doing? So we have just some examples here, mentoring. This is going out in your community, mentoring, and planning, really creating some plans to do something different. Listen, true listening, and connect with the intent to listen more, talk less, dive in and learn so that you educate yourself, so that you become the best you can possibly be, to have a conversation that's bridging, that and get out and vote for the things that you believe in every single election. What else? Did anyone write anything else in there? Address them head on. And I wrote dive in and learn, but this is address head on. Address issues head on.
Putting financial support into programs that are actively in the change process, and visibly be brave to share these messages publicly. You know, I'm hearing in that a resistance to being a silent bystander. You know, when you see something that violates your own values, you say something and you do something about it.
I'm going to put that in our We Speak Up. As one of our pieces of the vision, because it's so easy to just do this thing of distancing yourself from it and not being part of it, part of the change. Every moment is an opportunity for you to be an initiator of the change. In the conversation that's hard, where your in-laws are going to say something stupid, that was my perception. That's hilarious. That I want to hear their point of view and then speak mine and tell them why what they're saying is not accurate. You know, certainly a lot of people, I had somebody in my office come in and say something yesterday, and I was like, that's not accurate. You're watching Fox News. That's not accurate what's happening. You need to find out for yourself. So go to one of those offices and find out if that's truly what Black Lives Matter is about. So this is part of it. So when you think about and you see this picture and that future state, I'd ask you to choose one thing that's on that right side, one thing that you personally want to impact, something that you will take into your heart, and choose the one thing that you can envision, and then daydream that. Spend time daydreaming that reality, because you'd be surprised. You'll get tons of these ideas if you let this information come through in the daydream, so that it becomes more of the expectation that you see in the world. So you shift into that world you want to live in. What else would you add, Phil, or anything else that you'd like to open it up to the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy quality to seeing things this way. And there is a natural distinction or a distinction between what we will come up at this one time and place with this particular group of people in this improvised community, but one that has found a lot of common threads. There's a difference between that and how you live in your own personal life, and that always involves its own navigation. I think, Patti, if it's okay with you, I'll share a link to this blank template so that each person in the session can really, to the degree that they want to, start their own personal view of this. Do you have any thoughts about addressing this as an individual once they don't have the sort of, I guess, presence and support of our being here together?
Well, part of it is that you want to find your people who are with you in this and go out to find them, meaning that, don't put yourself in danger. But if you have people in your world that you haven't heard from for a while, connect with them and talk to them about issues that matter. Take this time to really get in there and then maybe ask them, hey, do you want to, what if we just drew a picture of the future like this process where we look at where we are and where we want to be, and then for our neighborhood, or, get them on Zoom, your community, or you're in organizational groups, say, this is something that we did and we can do it. It's not hard to do this. It's not rocket science. You look at where you are, you dream where you want to be, and you do some action steps, but you can choose to have a partner in that. You can choose someone to partner and support you in it.
Great. We have just a couple minutes left, or a few minutes left. If anyone wants to have any kind of wrap up thoughts, anything you want to share about how this has been for you to this point, or anything you feel burning that you really want to make sure gets considered and included? You've got a pretty full canvas there, I have to say, Patti.
I know it. It really is chock full of awesome ideas and conversation, and I appreciate everyone's comments.
I'm seeing a comment that I'm really surprised that so many people think and feel like me. So that's the hidden gift of suffering a period of silence, is that you discover that you're not as alone as you thought you were when people speak up. That's why it's so important that every voice speak out and be heard, because you can only find your people when you share who you are, in my experience anyway.
Yes.
Oh, Patti, I'm feeling kind of moved by this. I really appreciate all the energy that you've put into channeling and encouraging this future.
Yes, and I would just say to people, on the call, we'll post this in the Facebook group. Both Phil and I will post this video and also this image right away. And you can always, Phil will post the template, but you can always get that template on my website, Up Your Creative Genius. You can always get it there. It's always available. There's, it's in the free downloadable things. And just take this to heart, that this is what creates change, this constant conversation, and this is the time. This is true. This is the time for change right now. But change is an individual thing, and it starts with you. So spread that change to everyone you know. Talk about it as much as you feel comfortable, and bring that love that you are in the universe into everything you do, so we can create this world that we long to live in.
Thank you so much, Patti. I can't say it again. And to everyone who came, thank you so much for joining, for contributing your voice, for sharing your mind and your heart and your words.
Thanks, Patti.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic day. Take this out with you. Go do your thing. You can do it. I'm behind you. We're behind you. We want this. All of us. We're a community. We can do it.